Morning, everybody. So I've had actually the opportunity to be with Dr. Anderson in Kigoma on Lake Tanganyika. One of those pictures was with a helicopter. We were on that trip together, actually. So we go back a ways, and sooner or later our PowerPoint will come up. So I'm a full-time missionary with Surge Mission. It's based out of Philadelphia, and I work in Burundi, Central Africa. I've been there for the past 4 years. I spent 2 years at Tenwick doing a global ophthalmology fellowship with Dr. Ben Roberts as well. I'm currently a professor at Hope Africa University, and we're helping develop a teaching hospital with a team of about 50 other expatriates, US, Canadian, UK. And this year I'm a clinical instructor at the University of Michigan doing a sabbatical basically there. And I'm also working with Wills Eye Hospital in their Center for Academic Global Ophthalmology, helping to get that off the ground. So today I'm just going to touch a little bit on what MSICS looks like in the majority world. You've already heard a bit about it from the others, but this guy is a great example of what life looks like for blind people. We'll say his name's Kip Langat. So this is a Kenyan missionary who is pre-screening for us. She took this picture of a blind man, and actually his wife was blind as well, and they're literally starving to death in their little hut in rural northern Kenya. So for Kip Langat and people like him, when you look at global statistics, and these numbers are even a little bit older from the World Health Organization, but there's almost 300 million people with poor vision, nearly 40 million blind, and as Glenn said, most of those people live in the developing world, in the majority world, and their life expectancy gets cut in a third when you go blind. I've heard that if you go blind in Africa, your life expectancy drops to under 5 years. It's a death sentence. And the great news is 80% of that is reversible if you can get to a good MSICS surgeon and not get blinded by your cataract surgery. So half of the world blindness is cataract. Right now, as of a few years ago, there's about 18 million people blind from cataract. And by 2020, that number is expected to climb to 32 million. And by 2050, I think I saw a number just came out, 50 million blind from cataract in 2050. So as Glenn said, we're not keeping up. Even though our numbers are going up of surgeries done, we're not keeping up with the growth of the cataract rate. So we've got work to do. So in the majority of the world, when we drove in this morning to this center, there's very nice handicapped spots to park. There's ramps, things to take care of handicapped people. Where I live, man, there's no thought about being handicapped. And I live in a mountainous country. This is where I grew up in Togo. But across the majority world, this is what it looks like to get from A to B. And when you're blind, man, that's tough. It really takes 2 people out of the household income, which usually means farming, So someone's gonna have to stay home with grandma or grandpa to take care of them. So grandpa and grandma can't work anymore. And then usually someone who should be in school or out in the field is now taking care of them. Or they don't, and that person sits in the corner of the hut all day, gets depressed and dies. So it's a huge economic impact as well on these families. So here, we've got our fancy machines and our fancy ORs. But that's probably not going to work for Kip Langat and his wife, who are starving in the middle of rural Africa. So what is the answer? If phaco isn't, why isn't it? You have huge investment up front, $50,000 to $100,000 upfront cost. You got to keep it going. You've got to get disposables. You have to have really good training, actually. And we saw it's not ideal for all situations. And the foldable IOLs, even if you use phaco technology, you still got to buy a foldable IOL, which is significantly more expensive than a rigid IOL. So we're talking about MSICS, but are we settling for a kind of a second-class option for the poor? And there's several studies that show that we're not settling for a second-class option. This is a great option. This study, I love it. It's out of India. They enrolled people for 3 days, randomized between phaco and M6, and they enrolled 400 patients. 3 surgeons, I think, and 400 patients in 3 days. And so this was done with the help of L.V. Prasad, the study. You'll see again, corneal edema was twice as frequent in the phaco group than the M6 group. So M6, if done right, is really gentle on the cornea because you don't have any of that ultrasound power. And we won't go through all of these things, but basically this is showing us that the outcomes are very similar. For example, at 6 weeks, best-corrected visual acuity is the same in both groups. Uncorrected visual acuity for the upper end, the 20/20, 20/25 phaco, we'll get a few more than the small incision in their hands, but it's pretty close, and it's great. Oh, the astigmatism there as well. If you do a good M6 wound, and if you go temporally, really you get about the same astigmatism as you do with phaco. This study was already mentioned. Steve mentioned it, but I'll talk about it a little bit more because it's just a really fun study. So this is Dr. Rui in Nepal, up in the hinterlands of Nepal, checking people for cataracts. And so he's considered one of the world's best M6 surgeons. So this study that Steve mentioned is a great study. They decided, we see these studies coming out. You don't know how good the phaco surgeons are. You don't know how good the M6 surgeons are, going head to head. Let's find the best M6 surgeon and one of the best phaco surgeons and put them head to head, and let's see who does better. So they got David Chang, and they got Sanduk Rui, and then they had a little bag in the OR, and there was a yellow marble and a red marble, and the patient would put their hand in and pull out a marble, and whatever color marble they got, that's what OR bed they went to. And so they ran them on the spot to either Dr. Chang or Dr. Rui in the OR. And these are their baseline characteristics, pretty much the same here. And again, a lot of these patients are going to be illiterate, which plays into kind of some of your refractive goals. But on post-op day 1, everyone was there. And even going out 6 months, they still had pretty good follow-up for the rural location they're working in. So we have decent follow-up. Just a few things to note. 50% of these phaco cases in this setting, Dr. Chang had to use trypan blue. With M6, with Dr. Rui's technique, you don't need trypan on anything. There's only one posterior capsular rupture. I guarantee you, in our hands, there would probably be a few more. This was Dr. Chang operating. So he didn't have very many complications, but if you talk to him, it wasn't the easiest day of his life either. And then you will get some more hyphemas with M6, but these always go away. It's not a big deal. All of them in this series resolved by day 5. But when you're opening up your interior wound, you'll nick a few blood vessels every now and then, and you'll get a small hyphema. It's rarely a major issue. Again, the corneal thickness was better in the M6 group, so they have actually a quicker post-op day 1 visual recovery. And then the astigmatism, these numbers show that they're pretty close to the same. The p-value wasn't significant. And actually, when I looked at my data, if I operate temporally, these are the same. That's the same number I get in Burundi, 0.88. So you can see you can do M6 and not get a lot of astigmatism induced, unlike those old style extra caps where you could get massive amounts of astigmatism, especially if you had a tight suture. I will say with 6, I feel like you get a higher rate of PCO. I don't know if that's been your experience, Glenn, than with phaco, and that's what they found in this study as well. We'll see that, though, their IOLs, maybe I already went by that, they didn't use a square edge IOL in the M6 group in this, and they now make those, and I've switched to that. So they have an aspheric square edge IOL out of Aravind Oral Lab that I use. and we'll see if that makes a difference. But again, Steve already talked about some of this, so I won't talk about it too much more, but this is uncorrected visual acuity. You can see day 1, the M6 group actually did a little better than the phaco group, and then by 6 months, they're close to equivocal, with the phaco group getting just a little bit better on a few things. And best corrected visual acuity, they're really neck and neck there. Another way to look at it, the World Health Organization sets kind of 618, just the same as kind of 20/60 as a reasonable outcome. If you're getting worse than that, they're not happy. So people look at how many people are getting 618 or better results. And so you can see uncorrected visual acuity is neck and neck there. And best corrected visual acuity, 98.1% in both groups. So people are getting great outcomes with M6 compared to phaco when you put the two of the world's best surgeons head to head. Other things they looked at in that study were the cost. So Dr. Chang, you might be thinking, oh man, they're setting this guy up with a junky old phaco machine, and maybe that's why. No, they brought in the best of the best equipment. They basically replicated his US OR in Nepal and gave him everything he wanted when he went head to head with Rui. And so for that setup, it was $70 per phaco in disposables and lenses, et cetera, versus $15 for the manual 6. And then your setup costs, and this was over 10 years ago. I bet your setup costs for phaco are double that now. I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't had to set up a phaco unit, but some of you young guys setting up your practice, maybe you've had to do that and you know how expensive it is. Whereas M6, you can set up your surgeon for a lot lower costs. So again, for Kip Longat, M6 is definitely the answer, in my opinion. It's been proven to be one of the most cost-effective interventions in all of medicine. It's like on par with immunizing children, like the cost-effectiveness of taking care of blind people with M6. So honestly, we couldn't be spending our time in a more useful way, literally. For me, just a little story about how I learned M6. So I was in residency at Wills Eye, and no one knew how to do M6. I had a case, it was a scheduled extra cap, and I saw my attending really didn't know how to do a nice extra cap anymore either, and it was just plain ugly. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. And that's how I kind of got interested in M6, and I just learned it on YouTube. I did a grand rounds on M6 that I presented and showed those studies. I showed some videos on how to do it. It looks pretty reasonably straightforward. And the head of the cataract service said, well, let's give it a go. So we started doing M6 at Wills. The residents really were the ones doing it, and the attendings watched. And now it's got a lot of traction. And there's several attendings that are teaching M6 at Wills, and it's great. So I kind of was self-taught. So after residency, I knew I was moving to Africa. So I decided to spend a month in Nepal. This is Kathmandu. And Tilganga Eye Center is right across the river from one of the oldest temples in Nepal. This is about a 3,000-year-old temple right across the river. You can see they're cremating right on the river side there. And there's someone in the river collecting all the jewelry. They cremate them with their jewelry on and then dump their ashes into the holy river. And then this entrepreneur is making a living off finding jewelry on the riverbed. This is Tilganga Eye Center. It's a beautiful facility. And so I spent a month there learning M6. So it was largely kind of like they kind of let me do my thing on my table, and then right next to me was the attending, keeping an eye on me from a distance. And when she looked over, she didn't necessarily like everything she saw. But I also went out into some rural locations, and this is I'm in a taxi here. And Smokey Joe here is on his cell phone the entire time. And we're talking about the Himalayan mountains on a dirt road. And I'm basically like, my chances of going off this seem pretty high. I like my chances better on the roof so I can jump off. And it was super crowded inside. So I just took a ride on the top of the vehicle because I figured my chances were significantly better if he went off the side of the road being up top. So yeah, there's these little tiny roads, and you head on traffic. I will give him this guy. He did get to the inside edge. That was good. So, but MSICS is great. I mean, we can pack up a team of. I was in Kenya for 2 years, and so we did trips up to South Sudan. We can put our whole team in a little caravan airplane, pack up everything you need, and go to literally the world's most remote sites, and crank out hundreds of cases of MSICS for people that would never have access to an ophthalmologist. In some of these places in South Sudan, by vehicle, it's 2 weeks to get to the capital, where the only ophthalmologist is, and you will die getting there. I mean, if you have a vehicle crossing South Sudan, you're probably going to be hijacked, and you won't make it. So it's just so versatile. It was blazing hot. I was sweating so hard with the gown on. I was like, I think it's more sterile if I don't wear the gown and don't sweat all over the patient's head. But MSICS is so versatile. You can set up in a couple hours and be operating. So just a little fun, since you guys are coffee's starting to wear off. So just take a look at this lady. She came in totally blind. She's like probably in her late 30s, early 40s. A mother, totally blind, pen light OU. She got let in by a stick just like that. Here she is. She gets her bandages off. These ladies are so happy. And then this was Saturday. We landed on a Saturday. We did a few surgeries so that these people could get out and advertise for us and bring in more people. And so Sunday morning, I was going to preach under a church that was basically a tree. And we found her going home.
And now she's running to meet the pickup.
So we gave her a ride.
She was stone cold blind yesterday. Oh, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Look at this. Claire was getting led around by a stick yesterday.
So we happened to spot her in the bush as we were going out to the church. But and then this was a spear master who was totally blind. In South Sudan, the spear masters, they run these kind of cattle camps. You guys in Texas know about that. And they're kind of like a witch doctor. They're the spiritual leader of these groups. But the lore is they're never born and they never die. And they come out of the Nile and they return to the Nile. And when it's their time to go, they bury them alive. But this guy was totally blind. And even though he was totally blind, it wasn't his time to go yet. So he came to the clinic, and we were able to do surgery for him. He just got his patch off. He still got a mature cataract in the right eye.
And go to what you go with Ukrainian, and going on the yard, they pour Marianum, and I'll get out to Marian Colabi, Jitola Mirka Aquarian, and go to what you go with. What I remember.
This guy was 2020 when his patch came off. He was pen light before.
Neli jager ko nyawa Mariana japia de ngoli ndida chewu ndida ka joka mai baro a chewu bare ngwa Mariana yom chin gop ka da tunyi randa ba chore de men lu ku mi kurut chen anda ne rat chwe de men lu ku mi kurut chen Mariana do ka ngur ba
These guys aren't crying because they're not tough. You see those stripes across there? That's their ritual to become a man. Take a knife across the head. And if they cry, they don't become a man. So, those are tears of joy.
Gideon, what are they singing? What are the words?
They're singing. They feel happy. That's why they sing. Yeah, they feel happy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you, everyone in this room who's done these trips has video upon video just like that. So it's a special thing to be able to deliver eye care in these places. And it's a privilege. And it is the answer to blindness in the developing world, cataract blindness. And I'm excited all of you are here to learn how to do it and do it well. And as we're going to learn, we're doing this so you guys can be trainers. Because that's really investing in human resources is the answer. If you go and do 500 cataracts in a week, that's great, but it's nothing. There's so much blindness out there. We've got to be training our partners on the ground and setting them up for success. So that's what I'm hoping you guys will take away from this, is that you're going to learn a skill that you can give away and give away and give away, and try to give that heart for those you train to give it away and give it away. Just like we saw last night with Roger Cade. We can have millions of MSICS surgeons. If every year we trained one person and that person trains one person every year, we can just multiply this so quickly. So thank you.